Hello. Okay, we're just gonna wait a couple seconds here. I'll get started right at 7 o'clock. Who's here? Type in the chat box and say hi. Who's here? Feel free to say hi. Okay, let's get started here. Welcome to this new online thing that I'm doing. We'll see how this goes. We'll see how many people like this. I'm going to talk a little bit about supercharging our EXJW healing. There's a couple of components that I really want to focus on. And then, I don't know, probably after about 20 minutes or so, I'm going to open this up for questions. If anybody wants to come on live and share what they're feeling, any questions that we might have, let's open this up for a group discussion in here in a little bit, okay? What even is here and how did I get here? Okay, we're going to go into that. Okay. I want to start with something a little bit bold, and I truly mean every word of it. You know as well as I do that the organization that we came from spent decades teaching us that we were powerless, that our life was in Jehovah's hands, and the best that we could ever even hope for was just to wait, obey, and survive until paradise. So tonight, we're going to start dismantling that lie, because that's another part of the religious brainwashing that we came from. And we're not going to replace it with religion. We're not going to replace it with doctrine. I prefer science. I prefer facts. I prefer logic. And we're going to be talking a lot tonight about the neuroscience, because the truth about what the human mind is actually capable of is kind of mind-blowing. My name, if you don't know me, my name is Dina Moore, and I spent 38 years as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, over 20 as a regular pioneer. So I know exactly what was done to your mind, because I had the same thing done to my mind. When I left when I was 38 years old, I lost everything. All of my family, I lost everything. Family, friends, kids. It was like a horrible country song. I lost everything. And I rebuilt it from nothing. I had to literally rebuild everything from nothing. And I currently own a healing retreat, and I live in Ecuador. I've dedicated years to studying neuro-linguistic programming, which is the science of the mind, hypnosis, energy work, and quantum science. So it's that background that I'm bringing here to you today, because I know that coming from a cult, we didn't have experience or any exposure to anything other than God is going to fix everything. And once you come out of the cult, there is so much room for growth. There is so much information that we were lacking. So when I tell you tonight that you have more power than you've ever been allowed to believe, I am not guessing. I'm living proof. So let's get right in here, okay? I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about this. When you left or pushed out, either way, I'm sure you probably felt lost. There's probably a big part of you that didn't know how to make a single decision without checking against the organization's rules first. I remember when I first got out, I was with my partner at the time, and I would say things like, oh, is this shirt too short, or is this skirt too tight, or something like that. And he would look at me really weird and be like, what the heck is wrong with you? You're a grown woman, wear whatever you want. And I was like, oh, yeah, huh? So that's the power that the organization had over us. And that feeling actually has a name. It's called learned helplessness. And it was not an accident. They very carefully crafted this learned helplessness in us. In the 1960s, there was a psychologist by the name of Martin Seligman who ran some experiments with dogs. He actually would place them in situations where they would get like mild electric shocks, and no matter what they did, they couldn't escape. So after a while, even when the door was open and escape was totally possible, the dogs literally just laid down, accepted the pain, and they'd learned that trying was pointless. And that dog was us. The Watchtower system was a master class in learned helplessness. Every major decision, who we marry, what career to pursue, whether we go to college, how to raise kids, if you even have kids, who you're allowed to love, all of those decisions were made for us. And when you tried to think for yourself, you were either corrected, counseled, shunned, marked, whatever. Your nervous system learned, don't try. Wait, obey. Jehovah will handle it. And here's the painful truth. Leaving the organization does not automatically open that mental door. Your body is still, your neurology and your central nervous system is still running that old programming of the learned helplessness. We're still waiting for permission that's never going to come. So tonight we're going to start reprogramming that. I'm going to tell you something that might seem kind of crazy at first, but stay with me because this is science. People heal from real diseases with sugar pills, and this is not a metaphor. It's called the placebo effect. It's documented, replicated, and it's been published in some of the world's top medical journals. In placebo studies, patients are giving fake treatments, zero active medicine, and they show measurable physical changes in their bodies. Tumors shrink, pain disappears, blood pressure normalizes. Why? It's because the brain, when it truly believes healing is happening, it triggers the same chemical cascade as an actual drug. Dr. Joe Dispenza has documented case after case of people healing from conditions that their doctors gave up on, like multiple sclerosis, cancer, degenerative diseases, all through focused mental and emotional work alone. This is not pseudoscience. This is not wishful thinking. This is documented things that we were blinded from. And I understand why the Watchtower did that. If you truly understood the power of your mind, you would have left. And it was a control mechanism. They taught us that we had no power. But the science tells us differently. The science is telling us that our mind can literally change our body chemistry. It's not spirituality, it's biology. Now, there's a flip side to the placebo effect too. It's called the nocebo effect. This one might hit a little bit closer to home because it's the exact opposite of the placebo effect. It's where you're made to believe that something bad is going to happen and your body actually makes it happen. Patients told that their placebo is a dangerous drug experience actual side effects. People get misdiagnosed with a disease and they actually die from that disease when they were never sick to begin with. Doctors will give time frames. You have 3 months to live. And you know what? Patients die right on schedule, even if the diagnosis is wrong. So the power of the mind to create whatever it's given is powerful and it's documented. So now think about what was poured into us if you were born into the religion. Think about what was poured into our brains from the time that we were children. Armageddon's coming. The world is evil. You're nothing without Jehovah. You're going to fail out there. You can't trust yourself. You can't trust anyone who leaves. There were decades and decades of this nocebo programming that we got brainwashed with. So no wonder healing feels hard. But here's the other thing that it means, and this is the part that I really need you to hear. The cult accidentally proved the power of belief. They kept millions of intelligent, capable people controlled for decades, using nothing but words and ideas, not weapons, not chains, not words, just simply words, ideas, and beliefs. If a belief is that powerful, and now you know that it is, imagine what happens when you take control of those same mechanisms. Imagine what your mind can do when it's finally working for you instead of following the brainwashing from the organization. Now, I want to address something directly because I know somebody is sitting in the room right now, and you might have felt uncomfortable when I started talking about creating your life, taking your power back and creating something beautiful for yourself. There's this little voice in the back that says, maybe that's prideful, or that's what worldly people think, or who am I to want those things for myself? Or, we also have our own stumbling blocks, like I've wasted so many years, my age, I can't rebuild at this age, I don't have an education, okay. That is still brainwashing, because the science is telling us that no matter what the background is, our mind can be our greatest asset to creating a new future for yourself. That voice that you hear in the back is the voice of the cult. And it's going to come up, and that's okay. We don't need to fight it. Just notice it and recognize it for what it is, a lie, just like everything else that we believed in. Because here's what is true. Wanting a beautiful life is not a sin. Healing is not pride. Taking responsibility for your future is not arrogance. In fact, it's the most mature thing that you can do. Now, let's get back to some of the neuroscience here. Deep in your brainstem is a system that's called the reticular activating system. The RAS is what it's called. And basically what this is it's your brain's filter. Because the human brain receives so much information, they say 11 million to maybe even up to 20 million bits of data per second, and that's too much, it's too overwhelming. So this reticular activating system serves as a filter to pick out the bits and pieces of information that we need. This system that we have, the reticular activating system, can process approximately 40,000 bits of data per second. So if you can imagine, your brain is this satellite that's receiving 11 million bits of data per second, and you're only processing 40,000. It literally means that you have discarded 10,960,000 other bits of information, okay? So how does your brain choose which 40,000 out of 11 million to pick? Well, your reticular activation system, this RAS system, filters for what you believe is important and what you expect to see. So when we were witnesses and we believed that Armageddon was imminent, we saw signs everywhere. Our brain would cherry pick the information for us. Every war, every earthquake, every moral decline. Our RAS was tuned to find the evidence for what we already believed, okay? Confirmation bias, we a lot of times use the word confirmation bias regarding religion, but the truth is your brain's job is to confirm your beliefs all the time. So it also works exactly the same way in reverse. When you begin to focus on healing, when you start to focus on the possibility, on a future that you actually want, your reticular activation system starts scanning for evidence of that. Think about that for a second. You start noticing opportunities that you would have discarded, ignored, walked right past previously. You start connecting with the right people, not because the world magically changed, but because your filter did, and now you're able to see things that you passed by before. Before Jim Carrey was famous, before anyone knew his name, he was broke. He was sleeping in a van in Los Angeles with his family. And he drove to an overlook over the city, and he wrote himself a check for $10 million. And he put on the memo line, he put for acting services rendered. And he dated it for 10 years in the future. He carried that check in his wallet every single day. He didn't just vaguely fantasize, he visualized, he felt it as though it was real. He made decisions, he took actions, he showed up as somebody who was already becoming that person, and 10 years later, almost to the date, he was paid $10 million for the movie Dumb and Dumber. That is not magic. That is the brain's goal-seeking system being given clear, emotionally charged targets. And we were hampered by the religion because it told us to wait on God, wait for paradise, that's going to fix everything. When we have this supercomputer here that is literally able to do that for us. Here's another example of the power of the mind. In the 1970s, Soviet sport scientists ran experiments with Olympic athletes. They split them into 4 different groups. One group they trained physically 100% of the time. The second group trained 75% physical and 25% mental visualization. The other group trained 50-50, 50% physical, 50% mental. And the last group trained 25% physically and 75% pure mental rehearsal, mental visualizations. They would just sit there and imagine themselves performing perfectly. Guess which group performed the best? Yes, the group that did 75% mental rehearsal and only 25% physical actually performed the best. They've done similar experiments with musicians, people who have no experience with the piano. They had some that were actually practicing playing the piano and others that just visualized it. The ones that were literally just visualizing the exercises performed better than the ones who were actually physically performing the exercises on the piano. This is the power of your brain, because your brain, when it vividly is able to imagine an experience, it fires the same neural patterns as when you actually have the experience. Your brain can't tell the difference between imagining, rehearsing something and actually physically doing it. So when you use visualizations, you're activating this system in your mind. You're literally building the circuitry for success in your mind before it happens in the world. So I want you to do something with me right now. If you can, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think of just one thing that you want for your life. Not what the organization would have approved of, not what your family expects, not what's realistic, definitely not what's realistic, based on everything that's been taken for you. I want you to think of something that you want for you. Not even working on how you're going to do it. I want you to think of one thing. Your one thing for you, your life, your one real precious life. Maybe it's someplace that you would love to live. Maybe it's someplace that you would love to travel. Maybe it's a relationship that you would love to have, or a job that you would love to have. Maybe it's a feeling of peace that you seem to be lacking, that you can't seem to find. Maybe it's a version of yourself that you've only seen glimpses of. Whatever it is, I want you to take a minute here, and I want you to just imagine this, and I want you to just let yourself want it. I'm going to wait for 30 seconds because I want you to hold this thought for 30 seconds. What is it that you would really love for yourself? If everything were possible, if you had a magic wand, what do you want for yourself? Just for you. Think about that. No apologizing. Find that now. Okay, now you're probably starting to notice something. Those of you who were able to do that exercise, you might have felt a little flicker of guilt. You know, maybe there's a voice that says, I shouldn't want that, or that's selfish, or that can never happen, I don't deserve that. Those voices are the cult talking. But that want, that desire that you had, that thing that showed up when you gave yourself permission, that is you. That is real, and that belongs to you. And that is where we start supercharging your healing. One of the hardest things about leaving, and I will say this from deep personal experience, is that the organization didn't just give us rules, it also gave us our identity. it answered every question about who we were. We were Jehovah's Witnesses. We knew what we believed. We knew how to dress. We knew how to spend time with. We knew what music to listen to. We knew what the future looked like. We knew what happened when you died. Every existential question was all answered in this cute little box. And then when you leave, you're pushed out, either one. All of that collapses all at once. And a lot of us, I know I did this too, we fill that vacuum by making ex-Jehovah's Witnesses part of our new identity. And that's an important phase to go through because it gives us a sense of identifying with another community. But this channel exists because of that. But I want to make sure that you understand too, this is not our destiny. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses is not our destiny. This is just a chapter in our story. And you are the author of that story. The cult handed you a script. You didn't write it though, and you didn't audition for it. It was just given to you. You didn't, before you had the language to question it. And that was not your fault, but you're here now and you're out now. So from this point forward, what gets written is yours. In the NLP tool that I use, we talk about identity level changes, not just changing our behaviors, not just changing the outside, but changing the story of who we fundamentally are. And that work begins the moment that you decide, even just for tonight, that you are not a victim of your past. You are the architect of your future. So let me bring this home to you. Your mind was always powerful. It was just borrowed. It was borrowed by a system that needed your belief, your energy, your obedience to survive. They use the most sophisticated psychological tools on earth to keep you small, under the box, dependent, and afraid. And it worked for years, maybe decades. But here you are now. You survived one of the most sophisticated mind control systems in modern history, and you walked away from everything that you knew. You rebuilt in the dark, a lot of times alone, without a roadmap. And if you could do that, imagine what you're capable of when your mind is fully working for you. So I want you to do something before you go to sleep. I want you to pick that one thing that you want, and I want you to write it down. I want you to say it out loud, even if your voice shakes, even if it feels weird, feels awkward. I want you to own it. Because that's the beginning. That's the beginning of your future that you're going to create for yourself. You're not alone in this, and you are far more powerful than you've ever known. So with all of that being said, I know we've got a couple of people out here. Would anybody like to share anything? Is there any questions that anybody has? Anything else that we'd like to talk about when we come to creating our own future? Anybody wants to join? Hold on just one second. Let me put the link out there. Can anybody see that link? Hold on, let me put it in a different spot here. There's a link. There's the link for joining. Okay, Alicia. Alicia says that if anybody else is not wanting to join, she'll jump on and we'll talk here for a second. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about visualizations, because That sounds really cheesy. I know it does because I've taught this for many years. I know that people struggle with this because it's not real. It's, why, maybe we have fears of disappointment, fears of imagining something and then not being able to achieve it. But we are completely underestimating the power of our beliefs and the power of our mind. When you visualize something, and this is why when I used the example of the athletes that trained, mentally trained versus physically trained, the musicians that practiced mentally and had better results than people who practiced physically, the reason that works is because the brain doesn't know the difference between imagining something and something being real. So as we're, in fact, the religion knew this because they would tell us to visualize paradise. They would tell us to imagine paradise, and it would make it feel more real to us. And because this mechanism in the brain does work. So as you're visualizing what you want, remember too, not to focus on what or how this is going to happen. Because remember, this reticular activation system is filtering information, and it's filtering it according to what we want to see and what we want to have happen. When you don't have any dreams, or when you think something is not possible, your brain will not filter for the path to make that happen. When you choose to believe that you can get a career, you can become independently financially successful, that you can have a house, that you can travel the world, when you choose to believe and start feeling that, your brain will literally start looking for opportunities to make it happen. It is the most miraculous thing. I mean, it really does feel like a miracle where all of a sudden you get lucky, and it's not luck. Your brain just started filtering for things that it was previously ignoring. So I want you to think about that, okay? Because this isn't pseudoscience. This is documented. The power of being able to visualize your future will create your future for you. And the obstacles that we've been brainwashed to think that there are not the obstacles that happen in reality. You know, people start successful businesses late in life all the time. At one point I had a list of people who became successful like after 65. I think one of it was like KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. He started Kentucky Fried Chicken, I think he was like 68, something like that. Much later in life. It's never too late. And as long as you start dreaming, your mind will be able to find ways to make this happen. It will open up your life in ways that you've never had that chance before. So anybody want to join us? Anybody want to join? I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. I'll give somebody a couple minutes. Or anybody want to type in any questions? Let me check some of the other chat boxes here. Okay. All right. Well, if I don't have anybody else that has any questions or anything like that, I'd really love to work through some visualization processes with somebody. If somebody would like to volunteer. If anybody wants to volunteer, that would be awesome, because we could do this. We could do it live. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I've visualized, because I think personal examples are a pretty big part of how this can happen. And I also want you to know that I truly believe that the way we open up, that the universe can start answers is way more creative than we are. So we can get answers to our prayers, answers to our visualizations that's way, way faster. Okay, Michelle's willing to volunteer. Okay. Can you click on the link? Did you see the link? Let's see. Can you jump on that, Michelle? You could also just do audio if you want. You don't have to put the camera on. Okay, we'll see if we can get Michelle on here.
I had to download the app.
Okay, this is new. So this is new experience for me. So I wasn't sure how that works. So it took you a second to download it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what would you like to share? What do you think about what I'm talking about, the power of the mind? Is that something new or is that something you already believe in?
I believe in it, but I just don't know how to make it work for me. Like I just got laid off from work in January.
Okay.
And I'm kind of having that thought of, oh, am I ever going to get hired? Is someone going to, want me? And am I going to find a job I like? And the woe is me sort of thing.
Yep.
I'm also JW, so I get where you're coming from with a lot of stuff.
Okay. So I'll back up for just a second and I'm gonna explain why prayer works. Okay. There's four very specific steps in order to manifest a life that you want. Okay, so the first step is you have to be very clear and very specific about what you want. Okay. So we probably all did these prayers where we're like, I need $800 to get to the convention this weekend. And then we're very specific with what we want, right? So being very specific is step number one. Step number two is we believe and we know that it's possible. In the case of prayer, we believe that it's in harmony with Jehovah's will. We know that he can do this for us. We know this is possible to accomplish, okay? So it's being very clear with what we want. It's being very, very sure that it's possible. Step number three is we leave it in Jehovah's hands. We leave it up to the universe. We let it go like a helium balloon that flies up into the universe. We're not attached to the outcome, okay? And then step number four is we work in harmony with that prayer. Now, when I was in the religion, I used to think, why do worldly people's prayers work? It's because this is a scientific process. This is quantum physics. This is how we harness the universal energy. I learned this when I was still in the religion, and then I was silly enough to go, oh my gosh, that's how Jehovah's going to bring us to perfection. This is how he answers prayers, because these are quantum physics. This is how it works. Okay. Step number one, being very, very, very sure, being confident that it's possible, letting it go up into the universe so that we're not attached to the outcome. And then the last step is working in harmony with that. The universe is not an ATM machine. So it isn't going to just drop something on your head without you doing anything. When a prayer is not answered, they are not following one of those 4 steps. Either they're vague. So here's some ideas of vague use of our imagination. I want to make more money. Well, $5 is more money. That's not specific enough. I want to be happy. That's not that, even that is just, that's a very vague concept. We have to be very, very, very specific with what we're creating for ourselves. I want to make $150,000 a year working 4 days a week. By the end of the year, I want $37,050 in my Schwab checking account. We have to be very, very specific because the universe doesn't understand vague requests. And the mind doesn't work on vague requests. So we need to be very specific. Then we need to do an inventory of what our beliefs are. Because remember how I was talking about our brain filters according to our beliefs. When I talk about beliefs, one of the first things people will say is, well, that's not a belief, that's true. Yeah, I'm going to challenge that all day long. It's true because your brain is using confirmation bias to prove it's true. So when we say things like, well, I don't have an education, so I'll never be able to get a job, and our brain will sort for information. Remember, 11 million bits of data is coming in. Your brain is cherry picking 40,000, and its job is to prove you right. So if you believe that you'll never get a job because of your age, because of your lack of education, because of where you live, whatever, your lack of skill, whatever, your brain's going to go, okay, here you go, you're right. Here's the effort. Here's the proof. Here's the proof that you're right. Because I want you to, we need to start challenging those beliefs that are, quote unquote true. So what? Nobody ever gets a job after 45? So what? Nobody who hasn't gone to college can earn an income? You see? We start challenging those beliefs because they're not true. They're true for you. But when you really want to start creating your reality, you have to start challenging those, okay? And looking for examples, like Colonel Sanders, of proof, evidence to the contrary. So you're very specific, you believe that it's possible, and then step number 3 is understanding that there is something greater than you. It doesn't have to be God, but understanding there is a quantum world out there where coincidences can happen, where energy, luck, whatever you want to call it, comes into play. Maybe you've had coincidences like that happen to you, and they are not coincidences. It's science. These things can start happening for you, and you don't understand how it happened or where it came from, and it's not luck. We're creating our own luck. Call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever you call it, quantum physics. There are higher powers out there that are working in our favor. And then we want to work in harmony with it. So what that means is maybe, whatever your goal is, you want to make $150,000 a year, working 4 days a week, whatever. You don't just sit on the couch watching TV, waiting for somebody to randomly call you up and make that happen. We do have to work in harmony with our desire. We do have to start thinking outside of the box, and as you do that, you start noticing other coincidences. So how does working in harmony with looking for a job look like? Well, you're probably following all of the, regular methods. Well, maybe this means we have to start following some irregular methods. Or maybe we want to start challenging whether you really want, what kind of job do you really want? Do you even want a job? Or how about create your own business? Do you want a job or do you want income? Those are 2 different questions.
Right.
If income is what you're going for, do you love the corporate world? Did you love your job? Is that your soul's purpose?
No, not really, but
okay.
But I mean, I need medical benefits like most people do.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay. If you were doing something that you loved, making enough money, do you need medical benefits? Maybe you could pay for medical benefits, and maybe then that becomes a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
See, I really want us to start thinking outside of the box because I'm telling you, when I left the religion, you know what? I was homeschooled. I was homeschooled for crying out loud. I did construction with my dad. I did house cleaning. I had no assets. I didn't inherit anything from anybody. I had my head. I had my wits. That was it, you know? So part of when you're trying to manifest and you're wanting to create your future, I think it's really important to understand too, do you really want what you're asking for?
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want what you're asking for? Do you really want another corporate job? You know, or why do you want the corporate job? Is what you're really looking for is probably something like security, stability, freedom of stress. You want to be carefree. Those are the things that you really want to manifest, probably. You know, sometimes I'll work with somebody and they'll say, you know, I want to buy a house. Okay, well, how do you feel when you think about buying a house? Well, it feels like this overwhelming. It feels like there's all these tasks. I'm going to have to make all this money. You see, they're not charged by it. They don't light up. It doesn't make them glow.
Mm-hmm.
So, do they really want a house? Or what would that house give them? What would that do for them? Well, it would give them freedom. It would give them safety. It would give them security. All right. You see, their tone of voice already starts changing. Their energy already starts changing. And that becomes something that they are much more likely to attract because energetically they're aligned with it. What we have in our life is a mirror of what we have on the inside. When we believe things like I'm not worthy, I can't, it's not like there's a God out there saying, okay, let me answer this prayer. Okay, type, like I'm going to reject this one, you know, answer this one. No, this is science. This is an equation. What you put out is what you get back. A metal detector, let's say you have a metal detector and you've got it set for aluminum, okay? And you go scanning the beach, you are not going to find the gold ring. You're going to find the aluminum cans on the beach because that's what your machine is set to look for. And
Mm-hmm.
our human brain, this reticular activation system that I'm talking about, is exactly the same system. If it's trained, if you have programmed it to that you're not worthy, if you've programmed it that it's difficult, that life is a struggle, that you're always going to be struggling, that is exactly what it's going to find for you. So this is a deep, deep, deep work that we want to do because the Jehovah's Witnesses kind of gave us the quick route. Oh, you don't need to do anything. Jehovah's going to take care of everything. Paradise is going to come and everything's going to be fine. But
True.
it really bottlenecked us, you know? We didn't learn how to use the power, our powers that we have, our mental abilities that we have.
Yeah, I mean, because like a lot of
That
people
looks at
are,
everything.
you know, like you said, construction or painted for a living or clean houses or whatever, and
Mhm.
that's kind of it.
Right, right. And on top of that, I think probably one of the bigger challenges that most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses struggle with too is feeling like we're not worthy. You know, feeling
Mhm.
like, you know, it's harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of God than a camel through the eye of a needle or whatever, you know?
Mhm.
We were taught that we wore poverty with a badge of pride, you know, as a symbol of our spirituality. We looked down on people who had a lot of money as, oh, well, you know, they could be doing more to serve Jehovah. And all those beliefs affect us that maybe we can't or we shouldn't do something. And that absolutely needs to heal. I have somebody on there saying here, the ex-Mormon. We are sister cults, I swear. I lived in
Mhm.
Ogden, Utah, and some of my first clients were ex-Mormons. And these ex-Mormons would come to me and they'd be like, "You probably don't understand this, but I've just been shunned or you know, I'm restructuring my life." Well, being Jehovah's Witness, I totally understood what that was like because there's a lot of we're sister cults for sure. Feel free to hop in if you have any other comments if you'd like to join us too, because I'd love to chat with you too. So this idea that we're not worthy, this idea that we don't have the power to shape our lives, that God's going to do it for us, man, that is some serious anti scrub our brain deprogramming that we need to do. You know what? I have another channel too. Let me put up a link really quick for my other YouTube channel because I go into a lot of details. In fact, you know what? Most of my career has been spent teaching people the power of the mind, teaching people how to manifest and create their future. So I have a whole channel here. I'm going to post the link here for you, Michelle,
Thank you.
because I go into deep mind tricks right there. Okay. Check out that channel because I've got a ton of information there about
I will.
reprogramming your mind. I think one thing that I really want you to take away from this is everything that is in your head, every thought that you believe to be true, challenge it. Challenge it. I really had to do that big time when I left the cult because it was very shocking to realize that everything I believed was a lie. You know? So it made me question everything else. I don't know, is the world flat or round? I don't freaking know. I just realized I was in a cult my whole life.
Yeah. I mean, we were like basically force fed.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So what else is in my head that I just assumed was true, that I never really investigated myself, you know?
mhm.
I really had to dig deep, and that was really when the power of psychology really started transforming my life, because the power of your thoughts, the power of your intention is undeniable. It's undeniable. And why is it that one person's life is terrible and the next person's life becomes miraculous? You know, it's not our abilities. We like to say that it's our abilities or it's my brain or I'm smarter than other people, but the truth is we're not. We all have the same set of skills. We all have the same mental abilities to visualize, to feel what we want. Some people just figure it out faster than others, and then some of us never even knew that it was possible, you know? What I loved about leaving the cult was it gave me the opportunity to explore so many concepts and ideas that I never really even knew existed. And even the little bit that I did know, I put it in the frame of religion. Like I said, when I started learning quantum physics and the law of attraction and all of that, I was still in the cult. And I took that information, I was like, oh my gosh, this is how Jehovah answers prayers. Oh my gosh, this is how he's going to bring us to perfection. Without realizing, oh, wait a second, it has nothing to do with religion. This is how the world is set up. Science can tell you exactly how this works. It isn't prayer. It isn't God up there answering something. There is an energetic system, an energetic network that we are living in that works whether you mean it to or not. And we can call it whatever we want, but it works for everybody. Like I said, I used to joke and I'd be like, why does God answer worldly people's prayers then? Or, how is it that I'm working with these people that are absolute atheists that don't believe in anything and they can manifest $500,000 in 6 months? It's because the energetic principles are the same. The energetic principles are the same. How did I take those people? How did I take those business owners who didn't have a penny and help them turn their business into a $500,000 business in 6 to 8 months? It's the power of their mind. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Your brain's job is to prove you right. So what would you say are some of the beliefs that you have that you're assuming to be true? What are some of the beliefs in your mind right now that you assume to be true?
That I'm not good enough.
Okay. All right. So let's take that one right there. I'm not good enough. All right. So the first thing that I will tell you about that is the word enough. What does that mean? I think it's the
It's like a
worst.
measurement.
It's a worst, but it's the worst word in English vocabulary. Enough. It's non-quantifiable. There is no way to measure enough. Enough for
maybe unworthy is a better.
You're okay. Okay. That's good. That's a good catch. So maybe it's not I'm not good enough. Maybe it's I'm not worthy. Okay, good. All right, we're going to go with that. We're going to go with I'm not worthy. Okay. Do you have kids?
No.
Okay. When maybe you have nieces or nephews,
No.
maybe you have a pet.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to just think about a baby when they're born. Okay? Wherever they are, whatever part of the world that they're in, when an infant is born, are they worthy of love?
Sure.
Are they worthy of being taken care of? Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What did they do to deserve that?
Nothing. I mean, they were born.
Exactly. They were born worthy. They were born deserving. And the very fact that that little thing is breathing means that they are worthy. They're born worthy. Well, what happens with time is when do they, so let me ask this question. When do they ever stop being worthy? What's the age? What's the process? When do they magically have to start earning it?
My guess would be like maybe teenager, like we're
Okay.
going through
And
that, finding
who
yourself.
said? Yeah, who said? Now you're 13. You magically need to start earning what you've always naturally deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, right? So why is it that we're born worthy? Because every baby was, and you were a baby. You were born worthy. You were born deserving love. You were born deserving everything. What happens where we magically shut that off and feel like we have to start earning it? Well, you know what? A lot of it is the environment that we grew up in. A lot of it is our parents. Maybe if you're born into the religion, maybe it's the religion, because all of those start teaching us conditional love. You have to earn this. If you don't behave like this, I'm going to be mad at you. You know, we start learning this unconditional love, and we were not born with that. That was taught, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the people that taught you that, what kind of people are they? Are they highly intelligent, developmental experts on human psychology that are highly successful? Or are they kind of maybe broken people too?
Yeah.
Right? So broken people with unhealed trauma taught you that you're not deserving? Who gave them the right to decide that you're not worthy? I want you to think about that. Who gave them the power to tell you that you're not worthy? You were born that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how this belief that I'm not worthy, you see how it's based on a lie,
Yeah.
right? But see what happens to your brain. Okay, so now your brain has this in there, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. So 11 million bits of data come in every second, and your brain picks 40,000, and guess which 40,000 it's picking? The 40,000 that says Michelle's not worthy. Here's your evidence on a silver platter. Because we programmed it to tell us what to give us the evidence. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And how much evidence do you have? Oh, you have all kinds of evidence, don't you? Yeah. You have all kinds of evidence. You don't have it, you lost your job. You know, there's all this proof. Look at me not being worthy. Look at me not being worthy. But what about the 10,960,000 bits of information that your brain ignored? Because it was searching for the aluminum, like that aluminum detector, like the metal detector for aluminum. And you know what? You could have had the evidence right there that you were the most worthy, wonderful human in existence, and your brain didn't filter for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
How does that feel? How does that feel to think about it like that?
It kind of is like a switch, because well, I'm like used to thinking one way, and it's like, oh, wait, no, let's bring it over here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. What would happen if your brain started looking for proof that you were worthy?
um,
What would
I
your life look like?
Yeah, I think maybe at first I'd resist it just because I'm so used to.
Good catch. Good catch. So sometimes we have sub beliefs to the beliefs, right? So, like for example, Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in a soul. And that means that when you die, you need a resurrection. So you see, we have like all these cascaded beliefs because of this belief that come because of this belief. So when you believe that that you're not worthy of something, what are some of the other cascading beliefs? Um, okay, how about this? It's too good to be true. That's too good to be true. So something good comes along and we automatically have this sub belief that says, oh no, no, there's going to be strings attached to that. Oh no, no, something's wrong here,
Mhm.
right? So there was a couple of Princeton students that did a social experiment and they put money in a jar and they sat on the sidewalk and they had these great big letters out there that said free money, no strings attached, please take it. Do you know how many people took it?
Not too many.
Only two.
Yeah.
Only two. Everybody comes along and they're like, "What's the catch? What do you mean? What do you want? What's going to come of this?
Mhm.
What am I going to get arrested?" Right? Right?
Yeah.
And it was literally, whoops. It was literally free money right in front of them. And the two people that did take it ended up bringing it back because they felt guilty. Right? Right? So when your mind says, "Oh, it's too good to be true. Oh my gosh, we can't do this," isn't it? Yeah, that is another belief that we need to get rid of because
I,
there
I,
are opportunities everywhere.
I like the saying, the universe, was it? The universe is always acting in your favor.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Mhm.
100%. And I'm also fond of, I think it was Jack Canfield who said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Whatever it is that you believe, that is exactly what's going to happen and what is going to become true in your life. That's why Jehovah's Witnesses, when they see a crime or we see an earthquake, we're all like, oh my God, Armageddon's coming, because that
Mhm.
is what we're expecting to find. And so that's exactly what we find. This is a very, very powerful, powerful subject. And I'm very grateful of you for jumping on with me. I was getting a little scared there talking about myself.
I think I first saw you talking to, was it Alyssa?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Alicia, there was somebody on last week. Oh, Alyssa for
The
a life interview?
um At Home with Alyssa. Alyssa.
Yes, I just did an interview with her. I just did an interview with her. I think it came out like last week.
It was her or another show, or you know.
I've done a couple with the At Home with Alyssa. I think that's coming out. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was last Sunday or if it's coming out this Sunday. I did the interview a couple weeks ago with her.
Okay, then maybe it was another, like, XJW platform.
Yeah. So my ex-Mormon cousin over here says, do we start out worthy and then over time we're not so much? So I don't know if you kind of heard some of the answer to that question as we were talking, but the truth is no, we always stay worthy. What happens is we start becoming programmed because when we're born, we're this blank sponge. We have no filter. We believe everything that you're told. So as our parents start saying, you're a bad child, or, Jehovah's not going to be happy with that, or, you need to pray to Jehovah for forgiveness. Though religious beliefs play a big part in us
Yeah.
losing, hiding that feeling of worthiness. You
Can I
know,
tell you something really fast?
yeah.
I remember being 5 years old,
Hmm.
and it was Halloween, and you know, I wanted to celebrate Halloween. I wanted to go out, but I couldn't. So I remember, like, being in my bedroom, and I had like the blinds just kind of like, you know, you know, up like that, and I was watching like kids trick or treating, and I was looking at their costumes and all that. And my mom came in the bedroom, and she's like, "You little pagan!" Like calls a
Exactly.
5-year-old a pagan.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. And you're this innocent little sponge that doesn't have, yes, another motorcycle went by. That's when my dogs start barking. Yeah, that you as an innocent little sponge, trusting what your parents say, we absorb that and it becomes
Mm-hmm.
part of our identity. And that beautiful soul that we started out as, that is worthy, that believes in everything, that's connected to the universe, all of a sudden starts feeling small. All of a sudden starts feeling like, I'm not good enough. Like if your parents think you're pagan, oh my God, you must be
Yeah.
really horrible, you know? And we start thinking that it's not okay to feel worthy. It's not safe to feel loved. We're not good enough because you know what? You damn sure weren't in the religion. You were never good enough in the religion. I remember I was like super pioneer by the time I was 11. I was in Spanish. I had like 25 Bible studies a week because everybody had tons of Bible studies in Spanish. And I'd come home and I'd be like, Dad, my Bible study went to the meeting. He'd like, did they answer? I'm like, God, it was never enough. You know, I'm like, my Bible study is going to be a publisher. Well, are they getting baptized? It's like, oh my gosh, it was never
Mm-hmm.
enough. Never,
Mm-hmm.
never, never, never enough. But that is cult brainwashing. It is not true. It is not true. And when I'm speaking this way, you know, I'm very passionate about this because it's messed us up.
Yeah, it
It's
has. Yeah.
messed up big time. And now we got to fix it. You know, I really wish I could teach this to kindergartners. I really wish I could teach this in school. I would save humanity so much problems because now people come to me 40, 50, 60 years old and I have to unscrew them up from
Right.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. I've been out of the religion about 11 years now. And when I left the religion, I lost all of my family, over 50 family members. You know, I lost my career was based around the religion. Everything was based around the religion. So when I'm talking about these principles, I'm also talking from very personal experience because I did this. When I got out of the religion, I believed what everybody else comes out of the religion. Like, what am I going to do? I'm a woman with no education. I have no experience. I've worked, you know, window cleaning, construction, you know, I have no what the heck? You know, I'm doomed. But I had the background in the NLP. I learned that in about 2005 when I was still in the religion. Like I said, I started understanding the power of the mind. I was working, like I said, funny enough, I was in Ogden, Utah. And so my clients were the ex-Mormons. And so they would come to me needing help restructuring their life. So I had created this program for how to be worldly, you know, how to thrive in the world. And it worked. So fast forward when I left the religion, it was that exact same program that I used on myself. I didn't, I never intended on leaving the religion. It kind of snuck up on me, you know. And I didn't know what I wanted to live for. I had lost my kids, I'd lost everything, and what did I want to live? What did I want to live for? You know? And honestly, I didn't. Exiting this life was kind of the option. But I knew the power of the mind, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to try reprogramming myself. I'm going to try the neuro-linguistic programming. If it doesn't work, I always have the plan B, which is just, I don't want to live here anymore, you know? And it worked. It worked. I was able to go from 0 to retired here in Ecuador in 6 years.
That's amazing.
All because of the power of my beliefs, being very, very sure of what I wanted. I knew what I wanted. I knew I like I totally manifested the life that I have down here. When I first got out of the religion, I had told my partner at the time, I do not want to, I can't afford to live and retire in the United States. I'm 38 years behind, behind
Mhm.
retirement. So, and I had already lived out of the country. So I said, I want to go out of the country. I was very specific. I knew that I wanted about 40 acres. I could see the rolling mountainside. I knew that I wanted a river to run through it. See, notice the specifics of the details here. I knew I wanted it to be up against like national land. so that it wasn't just my 40 acres, but that I would have access to thousands and thousands of acres. I wanted to be about 10 minutes away from a large town. I wanted that large town to be very cultural, very music, very art oriented. You know, I wanted it to be a place where I could have easy access to lots of resources and everything. And so fast forward, 6 years later, when I finally came down here to Ecuador, I found this land within 3 weeks. I found it within 3 weeks. And I had assumed that I'd probably spend a year or more traveling around before I found exactly what I wanted. And this was perfect. This was literally, literally, literally perfect. So the story is, because I'm going to tell you how the universe works things out for you. Things that I had that were not in my control, that just all of a sudden were lucky coincidences, right? So I had found the property on some website that was some foreigners that were doing real estate here in Ecuador. They had my property advertised for $170,000 for these 40 acres. So I start asking them questions about the property and about the owners and stuff like that. And they were giving me like really vague answers, didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so I was talking to my landlord, who I had also known 3 weeks. And he's like, that all sounds really weird. He says, let me look up the owners and let me go find the owners. So he ends up finding the owners. It turns out the people who were the realtors who were trying to sell this was a total scam. They had taken the pictures off of Facebook. They didn't even know the sellers. The seller only wanted 70,000, not 170,000. They're scamming foreigners out of hundreds of thousands of dollars by jerking up the prices. So I get my land is only 70,000, not 170,000. But my friend, my engineer friend, okay, so my landlord actually ends up also being an engineer. He ends up being the person who built this place for me. What kind of coincidence is that?
Yeah.
So he goes and he finds the sellers for me, and he says, don't get your hopes up, because there's a lot of obstacles here still. Land transfer of property is not the same as it is in the States. Here in Ecuador, if the property owner dies, their children automatically inherit property. It automatically gets inherited. So my seller was 96 years old. He was a widow, and his 5 children automatically had a share in the property. So I don't have one seller, I have 6. And I don't know if you've ever done real estate, but 6 people coming to be of one mind on a real estate transaction is like impossible. And I have 6 that I have to work with here. So he's like, there's a lot of obstacles here. He goes, what if one of them is moved? What if one of them lives in the United States? What if one of them has died? There's all kinds of obstacles here. Well, it just so happens that all 6 people are right here in town, less than 5 minutes away from each other. They all agree on price. They're all very amiable, very kind people. It was super, super, super smooth. So then, right at the end, that is out of my control. My engineer that ended up building this place for me, he's like, I've never seen that happen before. He goes, that's unheard of, to have everybody get along like that. Well, then the biggest obstacle is, in order to transfer top property title, everybody has to be financially solvent, which means no back taxes, no child support, no traffic tickets, no water bills, nothing. You have to have everything paid for. And not just the sellers, but all their spouses too. So I've got 6 people, the 5 kids were married, so I have 11 people that have to be financially solvent in a third world country. And the problem being, my land is only worth $70,000, so let's say somebody owes $100,000 in back taxes, selling the property isn't even enough for them to clear their debt, so the property just ends up in limbo. My 11 sellers, between the 11 of them, owed a whopping $300 in like last month's water bills. And my engineer, his mouth just drops. He's like, this doesn't happen here. This doesn't happen. I owned the property free and clear in less than 60 days.
It's amazing.
Right? So when I'm talking about being very specific about what you want and letting go of the details, it's because the universe is infinitely more creative than you are at figuring shit out. The details fall into place. So in your case, when you're talking about a career, when you're very, very, very specific about what you want, I want X amount of money, I want this amount in savings, I want to live here, you get very, 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 very specific. And you trust that it's doable. You trust that it's out there. You know what? There are women out there like you that are getting exactly what you want. It's possible. It's doable. We just have to flush out the beliefs and the blocks that are in the way. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining me. I got scared there for a second.
No, I had to download the app.
Okay. Yeah. I'll know that for next time. I'll warn people that if they want to join, they'll have to download it. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you being here.
Right.
Anybody else want to pop on for a second? I'm going to, hold on, let me repaste my other YouTube channel here too. Because I really love talking about this topic because this can alter your life. I'm not even kidding. This can alter your life. That's my other YouTube channel. Manifesting Minds is my other YouTube channel. And I talk a lot about the neuroscience of creating your own life on that channel. If anybody wants to check that out. And actually, for the first time, I end up having these conversations in the private coaching room. I end up doing these conversations over and over again, teaching the same things over and over again. So I'm actually working on putting together a course. It's probably some of the best work that I have. It's a 30-day course on manifesting. It's got 20 courses in there. There's over 20 hours of content. Each course, each lesson has about 8 pages of workbook homework with it. So it's not quite finished yet. I'm hoping to have it done probably in another week or so. So anybody who's serious about reprogramming your mind, and you're not able to do coaching or something, maybe that's something that you might want to look into, because you can change your mind. Your mind is powerful. You just have to learn how, because we didn't come with an owner's manual. Our parents didn't come with how to raise your kid manuals. So we're a little bit backwards, we're a little bit behind the curve, not even just because of the religion, but because, like I said, we were not taught these principles from the very beginning. But it's not too late. Like I said, I was able to create my life in less than 6 years. I was able to retire. So, and like I said, coming from no education, from zero. All I had was my wits. That was it. That was the only advantage that I had. Okay, I'm going to give us another 10 minutes or so. Does anybody else want to chat? Anybody else want to jump in? Apparently, according to Michelle, it takes a couple seconds to download the software, but once you download it, you can jump in and join me here any week. Next week, you already have it on your device. Anybody else want to join us here, or type in any questions? If anybody else has any questions, I can answer questions too. Anybody going once, going twice? Come on, people. I'm easy to talk to. I'm easy to talk to. Okay, do me a favor. I really would like some comments here. I want comments about what questions did you have about the content that we just talked about? What blocks do you have to implementing what I just talked about? Because that can be some of our next episodes. I will specifically go over what are your specific blocks. Manifesting, creating your life. One of the reasons why I think this is so important is because I lost 38 years of my life to a cult. And leaving the cult cost me everything, literally cost me everything. It cost me my kids, it cost me everything. So I felt like because the cost was so high, I damn sure better make sure that this is the best life ever. I damn sure better make sure that it was worth it. That I create a life with, hi, my Mormon friend. You have trust issues downloading something. I will say that this is a really safe software. I've been using it. I haven't been using it that long, but I've been working with other people that have been using it for a couple years. If that relieves your trust issues. But anyway, I think that that's why I feel I'm so passionate about this subject, because I know how limited we are when we get out of a cult, whether it's the Mormon cult or whether it's the Jehovah's Witness cult. There's plenty of other cults out there too, actually. It's not just us. But we are behind, and we need a rocket ship to creating a life. And that's what this gives us. This is, it's not hocus pocus bullshit mumbo jumbo. This is neuroscience. This is quantum physics, right? And that gives you an advantage, that allows you to activate parts of your brain that you didn't even know were there. They've been running in the background and you didn't even know it was there. This allows you to create something, a future for yourself. And I don't know that there is any other method out there that can do it. If you're 40, 45 years old and you go back to school for a degree, good for you. I would never, ever, ever discourage that. But by the time you finish the degree, you have to work, find a job. That just seems kind of like a pain in the butt to me. I wanted to be retired. I wanted to create my own life. I wanted to have a 6,000 square foot structure in the Amazon. And and this was the way I did it. It was manifesting. Like I said, I feel like this completely dropped in my lap. Oh, I was so lucky. No, I wasn't so lucky. This is how quantum physics works. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Because if not, I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys all being here. The support means a lot to me. If anybody would be willing to jump on next week, I know I always have Alicia, who's my backup girl in case I end up talking by myself. But drop me some questions because I will be planning on what is our topic for next week. Okay, okie doke, guys. Okay. All right, thank you for joining me here tonight, and I will see you next week at the same time, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, mwah. Have a good rest of your evening, guys, and I will talk to you soon.